Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session on driving business success with comprehensive device management solution using Microsoft Intune. Today, we'll look at how Microsoft Intune offers a robust, flexible solution for managing devices across your organization. So whether you are dealing with personal devices, corporate devices, or anything in between, by leveraging Intune, we will look at ways we can ensure our devices are compliant, secure, and productive, ultimately driving better business outcomes. Now, the goal for this session today is to give you some knowledge and insight necessary to implement and manage Intune successfully. Also ensuring your organization is set up for efficient and secure operations. Now, before we dive into the specifics, let's take a look at our agenda for our time together today. Now, on the agenda, the session will be divided into two key phases, okay? So in the first phase, we'll spend around some 10 to 15 minutes maximum going through a series of slides. So we'll begin by addressing the question, what is Microsoft Intune? And this will provide a foundational understanding of the platform, its core purpose, how it fits into modern device and app management strategies. Also, following that, we'll explore some of the standard features of Intune, giving you some insights into its capabilities and benefits that it brings to your organization. Once we've covered the theoretical aspects, we'll move into the second phase of the session, which will focus on practical demonstrations. Now, during this phase, we'll walk through a few real-world scenarios, okay, showcasing how you can use Intune to boost productivity in a typical IT environment. So in a nutshell, that is how the session is going to be phased out today. I think time is fast spent, so without wasting my time, I want to begin the session. All right, let's start by looking at what Microsoft Intune is, okay? Essentially, Intune is a cloud-based endpoint management solution designed to help organizations manage devices and apps in a streamlined, secure way. So you can think of it as a control center for managing mobile devices, desktops, and even to some extent, virtual endpoints like virtual machines. Now, the question then arises, how does Intune fit in with managing devices and apps? And here is where one of the concepts come in, which is MDM and MAM. MDM standing for Mobile Device Management, which is all about controlling devices. So you control devices, its settings, policies, its security policies, and access to corporate data. So if we should take a look at the image on our left-hand side here, okay, you can see how Intune applies device management policies to ensure that these devices meet security requirements. So with MDM, the focus is on the entire device. So the settings of the device, applications running on the device, everything on the device tends to be managed. So those are mostly targeted towards corporate-owned devices. Yes. Then on the flip side, we have mobile application management. Mobile application management focuses on apps, basically, so corporate apps. So with MDM, you can secure company data without necessarily controlling the entire device. So if you look at the image on our right here, it highlights how Intune helps you manage corporate data separately from private applications. So for example, corporate data in managed apps like we have Word, Excel, Outlooks, company-owned apps can be protected, while personal apps remain unaffected. This ensures that even on personal devices, sensitive company data is safe. So in a summary, Intune tends to combine mobile device management and mobile application management to give us the flexibility we need to secure managed devices and apps, while also respecting users' personal privacy. So it is that balance between the control and user friendliness that is what makes Intune a powerful solution. Now, moving on, let's take a look at some key features of Intune. So I've already explained what mobile device management is mostly targeted to company-owned apps. So as part of the onboarding process, a user is being issued an app, is being issued a device, and this device tends to be managed because it belongs to the organization. Then we have mobile application management, whereby the user uses his or her personal device to access company applications and the data that relies in these applications. Now, we have also configuration and compliance policies. Now, in Intune, configuration policies are settings that tend to apply to devices or software systems to manage and control the behavior, security, and maybe the functionalities of devices. So in Intune, you can set several configuration policies. You can create policies to manage your settings, how the device behaves, and whatnot. Also, we have compliance policies. Compliance policies mostly go with configuration policies in the sense that they are mostly rules and conditions that you use to evaluate the configuration of your managed devices. So these policies can help you secure organizational data and resources from devices that don't meet those configuration requirements. So in Intune, you can create compliance policies and set in parameters in there that will verify on devices that are enrolled in Intune. So at any point in time, a device is not conforming to the policies you've created in Intune. Based on the compliance policy you've set out, Intune flags that device as non-compliant. Now moving on, we have Windows and driver updates. Now in Intune, you can manage how Windows and driver updates are downloaded and installed. So you can create a specified window and set it out and say at this particular time, all updates should be installed and updated within this given time frame. You can decide to prevent users from downloading updates that you might want to defer as an admin. And also, you can tend to manage how Windows updates and driver updates are installed on the devices. Also, you can even decide to manage whether updates can be uninstalled. You know, with Windows updates, we have feature updates and quality updates. Feature updates come roughly twice in a year, and then there's a quality update that comes every 3 to 4 weeks. So you can decide how all these updates are managed on your devices. Next, we move to application deployment and protection. Now, in Intune, you can use Intune to deploy applications. Now, with application deployment, you can deploy Microsoft Store applications using Intune. You can deploy 365 application using Intune. You can even deploy custom applications. The caveat with that is that with the custom applications, the application file format should be something that is acceptable in Intune. We'll take a look at that during the demo session so you get a feel of what I'm talking about. Then we have delivery optimization. Delivery optimization is mostly for organizations who are on a limited bandwidth. So, for example, if you have two devices, device 1 and device 2, when those devices are due for updates, the normal routine is the devices goes over the internet to the servers to download the updates. Now, with delivery optimization, if you have it configured in your organization, what it does is if device 1 goes over the internet to download an update, if device 2 is due for the same update, the device 2 does not go over the internet. Device 1 just shares the update locally with device 2, and device 2 gets to install that update. So that's what delivery optimization also does. Then we have another feature in Intune called Autopilot. Now, Autopilot is a way to customize the out-of-box experience for your end devices. So in Intune, if you get the hardware IDs of the devices and you upload them into Intune, what it does is you can create an Autopilot deployment profile, assign the settings, assign the applications, and push them to these devices. So all what the user has to do is enter his username and password. Then the Autopilot deployment profile takes effect. Then it installs all the updates and all the settings you've applied to those devices. Then we have remote wipe and remote lock. Now, remote wipe comes in a case whereby a user can mistakenly misplace a device. So let's say you've given the user a corporate device to work with, and the user comes to report to IT that my device has been stolen. Now, how do you safeguard the data on this device to ensure that should the device fall into the hands of a malicious person, your organization data is not compromised? So with just a single button in Intune, you can remotely wipe the device, and all content, all company data on the device will be stripped off. Then we have device restrictions. Now, we tend to restrict devices because there are certain functionality of devices that can pose as a security risk for your organization. So, for example, in an organization, there can be an IT policy or an IT policy that says there's a ban on the use of removable drives. So you do not slot in pen drives into company devices. So as an admin, you can restrict that functionality from Intune and apply it to all these devices. So even if the user tends to slot in a pen drive into a company-owned device, it will not work. Yeah. There are other settings that you can restrict in Intune. So we'll take a look at that. Then we have device encryption. Now, we encrypt these devices to ensure that your data that exists on your disk drives are protected. So when devices are encrypted and the device tends to fall into malicious person's hands, the malicious person tends to need a recovery key or a decrypting key. Yeah. So in Intune, you can encrypt devices with just a single policy, push the policy to about thousands of devices, provided they are enrolled in Intune. And this will help check that your data on your drives are secure. Now, moving on, one will ask the question, so what do I need to be able to enjoy all these benefits that Kweku is talking about? That is where the licensing comes in. So if you see on my screen, there are so many SKUs here that if you are on any of these SKUs, you have the functionality of or the benefit of using Microsoft Intune. Yeah. So we'll end the demo. We'll end the slideshow here. Then we'll start with a demo session. Okay, so currently I'm showing how the Intune interface looks like. If you can see what I'm showing, kindly give me a thumbs up so I know we are all on the same page. Okay, thank you. Now, to get into Intune, Intune is a web-based platform. You need to enter the URL intune.microsoft.com and it will bring you here. So if you see on this screen here, we have the home button, you have the dashboard. The dashboard shows you what actually is going on within your environment. There's an all service session that embeds all the functionalities into Intune. Then we have the devices node. This is where if you want to create any policy that is targeted to devices, this is where you come to. We have the application node. All policies targeted to applications exist here. Then we have endpoint security. You can also view the reports in here. Then we have a users node. Then we have the groups node as well. Then we have tenant administration and troubleshooting and support. So now for the first demo session, we'll take a look at MICTS encryption. Now I have a virtual machine here. If I should show you the Windows Explorer of the virtual machine, you realize there are some two lock icons here. This is basically telling us that this device is encrypted. So I'm sure it might be different from what you have. So if you are not seeing anything here, when you open your Windows Explorer, it simply means you are using a device that is not encrypted. So if at any point in time, the device gets into the hands of a malicious person who really knows what he or she is doing, he can find ways to retrieve data from your disk drives. Now, one will ask, how can we create policies in Intune to help ensure that all devices that exist within your environment are encrypted. So to create an encryption policy, there are two ways to achieve that. So you can either come to endpoint security here. When you come to endpoint security, there's a node here called disk encryption. So when you click on disk encryption, then there's a node here called create policy. As you can see, I've already created a policy here that encrypts all devices enrolled into my Intune. That is how come you are seeing the virtual machine I showed earlier, drives being encrypted. So if I should click on create policy, then I come to platform, I select for Windows. Then under profile, I select a profile, BitLocker, because that is where Windows encryption tool. Then I click create. Under create, I give the policy a name. So let's say this will become device encryption policy. And you click next. Then here, this is where you pick and choose which of the settings under disk encryption best suits your organization. Now, if at any point in time you see a parameter here that you do not understand, all you need to do is click on this little node here, and it will explain to you what turning on or turning off this particular parameter will do for you. Now, so for here, under BitLocker required device encryption, I can select enabled, then allow warning for other disk encryption. Now, what this does is when the policy is about to kick effect, it brings out a pop-up, okay, for the end user to know that his or her device is about to be encrypted. As an admin, you wouldn't want to interfere with the work of the end user, so you can decide to hide this. Okay. Then you configure recovery password rotation. What this also does is from time to time, there isn't just one recovery password for the disk. The recovery password tends to rotate. So if you want that functionality, you can select here and refresh the recovery password for either cloud devices. That is, if you are not using an on-prem hybrid solution with Intune. So for just cloud devices, you can refresh for Azure AD joint devices, or you can choose to have for Azure AD joint and hybrid joint devices. Since all my devices are cloud joint, so I'm going to choose refresh for Azure AD joint devices. Then you can also decide to choose the encryption method. So if you have a specific encryption method that per organization policies you intend to go by, you can choose it or leave it as default. When you leave it as default, what it does, there's a default encryption method that Intune tends to use. So as you can see here, there is XT AES 128-bit. That is the default. So if you don't choose anything here and you just leave it as it is, that is the encryption method that is going to be used for you. Now, scrolling down, you can see operating system drives. You can choose to encrypt operating system drives as well. You can choose to require additional authentication at startup. There are several parameters here that you can pick and choose as far as your organization policies go. You can also choose to encrypt fixed drives as well. Then if you have any removable drives that are attached to the devices, you can also choose to encrypt them. I'm not going to do that. So from here, once we have all what we need to selected, we click next. Then I'm not going to do anything under scope task. I'm going to leave it as the default. Then we click assignment. So here, this is where you pick and select which group should the policy apply to. Now you can apply policies to devices or to users. The difference is if you apply a policy to a user, wherever the user goes, the policy follows the user. So if the user should sign into a different device, whatever policy you've applied to the user follows the user to that same device. On the other side, you might want to apply policy to only devices. So regardless of whoever is signing to the device, the policy remains on the device. So I have a group here called Masterclass Group 1 with some devices in there. So that is where I'm going to assign the policy. And I click next and to review, and I create the policy. As simple as that, you can see you've created a device encryption policy and apply to specific group of devices. So all you need to do is just give it time for the policy to take effect. If at any point in time you want to check on the policy, you can come to the policy you've created here. For example, if I click on the one I created here, and there's a report on the policy. So you can see over here, it shows that the policy has been successful on 3 devices, and there are no errors, there are no conflicts, and there's none also in progress. So if you click view report here, it's going to give you a list of the devices that the policy was successful on, and those that even failed will also show here. So that is how to create an encryption policy in Intune. Now moving on, let's look at how to rotate a BitLocker key. So another scenario will be you, as an admin, maybe you might suspect that your recovery keys or a recovery key for a particular device has been compromised. So what you can do is you just come into Intune, then you look for the specific device. So for example, if come to devices here, so let's say the recovery key for this very device has been compromised. What I can do is I click on this device, then at these 3 nodes here, I click on it, then there's a BitLocker key rotation. So once I click on this, I get a pop-up telling me that there's a recovery key on there. If you click yes, what it's going to do is it's going to clear off the old recovery key and give you a new recovery key. So if I want to go ahead with this, I just click yes, and the recovery key rotation will be initiated. So the moment the device registered its last check-in in Intune, the policy will take effect. Now moving on, let's look at some ways we can restrict devices. I want to use this use case because it's very, very prevalent in organizations, whereby you tend to have users fond of saving their passwords in their browsers. Mostly IT admins who advise users not to do that because it poses as a security risk, but users will go ahead and do it anyway. So as an admin, you can manage all these. Okay, that is where you can use Intune, create just a single policy and push this policy to all devices so that anytime the user uses a password in any of the browsers, whether Edge, Google, Chrome, or Firefox, the pop-up node that comes to suggest to users to save their passwords in their browsers will no longer be applicable. So let's look at how you can create that policy so that if after the session, per your organization policy, if you want to use something like that, you can go ahead and do it. So to create that, since that falls under devices, so we come to the devices node here. Then we come to configuration. And under configuration, we create a new policy. So you can see the steps is just similar to how to create policies. If you were following what we did for the encryption one, you realize the steps are the same. Then under select platform, since we are doing for Windows 10, so we do for Windows 10 and later. Then profile type, we select templates. Then we come to administrative templates. Then we click create. So over here, you can give it a name as browser. Let's see, browser, password, block. It could be anything. Then under configuration, if let's say you are creating this policy to target Edge browsers. So you see we have Microsoft Edge here. So once you select Microsoft Edge, then you scroll down and look out for password manager and protection, and you click on it. You can see the option here that says enable saving password to the password manager. So you can click on this and you can disable it and click on OK. Maybe you want to do same too for, how do we call it, for Chrome. So all you have to do is come back to computer configuration here. And there is Google here. When you click on Google, you click on Google Chrome, you should see password manager. And the password manager is enable saving password to the password manager. You can disable it here as well. Now I want to ask, what if the user does not use Edge or Chrome? So with that, you need to import the ADMX file for the various browsers that you want to use. So we can click next from here. I'm going to leave the scope tags as default. Then under assignment, it is the same procedure. So here you either assign to a user or assign to devices. If you assign to a user, it follows the user wherever the user goes. If you assign to a device, it's specific to the device. So whoever is logged in, those policies tend to apply. So I'm going to assign this to all devices. Then you click next, then you review, then you create. So if I refresh here, you'll see the policy here. Now, maybe you want to have a look, you want to take a look at how the policy applies. So what you need to, how will you know that the policy has been applied? So for example, if I should come to this virtual machine here, and I come to my Edge browser here, on these three nodes here, I come to settings, I come to passwords, click settings, you can see offer to save passwords. So allow Microsoft Edge to save your password and keep them secure. You can see this option is grayed out. And there's a suitcase icon here that says this setting is managed by your organization. So you tend to control and you bar users from saving passwords in browsers, since that can pose as a security risk. Now, another one you can also do is also restricting the use of removable drives or flash drives on corporate devices. So maybe in your organization, there's a clear policy that says you are not supposed to use flash drives on company devices because of the potential risks that can come along with it. So in Intune, you can create just one policy and apply this policy also to the devices, and it will take effect. Let's take a look at how to create that one, so that if at any point in time after this session, any of you might want to implement that within your organization. So if we come to the devices node here, and we click on configuration, then we come to create a new policy, then select platform, Windows 10 and later, then templates. Where this particular policy resides is under device restrictions. So if you click on device restrictions and click on create, you can give it a name. It could be anything. Then you click on next. Now you see there are so many things that you can restrict on devices. Okay, but per the scenario at hand, where we can find this particular functionality resides under general. So if we click on general and you scroll down, you see removable storage. If you should click on this little node here, you can see it tells you block the use of removable storage. So if you click on block and you click on next and you assign to either users or devices and you click on next, then we have another node here called applicability rules. Now this tends to come in if maybe you want to pick and choose how the policy should be applied. So under applicability rules, you can decide that this policy should only apply if, let's say, the OS edition or the OS version is so and so. Yeah. So I'm not going to create any applicability rules here. I'm going to click next, review, then I'll create. So once you create this policy and you apply to the various devices you want the policy to take effect on, and you give it some time, you realize that the moment you enter, you plug in removable drives into the devices, there will be no show. Actually, you have no use for it. So now moving on to that, let's do a little demo also on remote actions. Earlier, I mentioned that you can remotely wipe devices, assuming that the device has been misplaced by the colleague or the staff. So to do that, if you come to Windows here, so let's say, for example, this very device has been reported missing by a staff. So to safeguard your organization data, you might want to go in there, then wipe whatever it is that exists on the device. So you click on the device. You can see there's a node here called wipe. So the moment I click on wipe here, then it gives me a window that explains that this is going to factory reset the device to its default settings. So all what you have on the device will be cleared away. You can also decide to wipe the device by keep enrollment state and associated user, or wipe the device and continue wiping the device, even if the device loses power. So someone can misplace the device, or the device can be stolen, and the device will be turned off. But the policy will still be applied on the device, even when the device is turned off. So you can assure yourself that regardless the situation, your data that exists on the devices are always protected. Now, moving on, I also mentioned earlier that you can use Intune to deploy applications. Now, you can use Intune to deploy every application, provided the application has the right file format supported by Intune. So to deploy an application using Intune, we come to the apps node here. Then let's say we want to deploy an application for Windows devices. So when we click on Windows and we click on the add button here, we can select the app type. Here you see you can use Intune to deploy store apps. Sorry. Here you can see you can use Intune to deploy store apps, and that is apps that exist in the Microsoft Store application. You can use Intune to deploy 365 apps as well. You can use Intune to deploy Edge. If you have an application that is a web application, you can use Intune for that. If you have a line of business application, maybe a custom application has been developed for the organization, that every staff needs to have the application installed on their device. So assuming you have over 100 users, as an admin, are you going to go to each of these users and manually install these applications for them? With just a single policy in Intune, you can create and push this policy to all these devices, provided they are showing up or enrolled in Intune, and the policy takes effect. So for example, I'm going to use line of business app here. So assuming I have an app that I want to install on devices. Over here, you can see to add a custom app or in-house app, you can see the app needs to have these file formats. So for Windows, if the app you are trying to deploy in Intune does not have these file extensions, it will throw an error. So what you can do is you need to ensure that the file you are using, the file you are deploying in Intune have these file extensions. So I'm going to click on select. Then under select app package file, I choose the file. So for example, let's say I have an app, a file called 7-zip here that I want to install on the device. And I click on OK. So over here, you can customize the various parameters for the application. So under publisher, which is required, you need to give it a name. So let's say I'm giving the name here 7-zip. Then app install context, either user or device. If you select user, that means the app is tied to the user identity. If you select devices here, meaning the app is tied to the devices. Then you can choose to ignore app version. If you have any command line arguments you want to specify, you can put them here as well. You can choose which category the app tends to fall in. So for example, if let's say this is a custom application designed for your organization, it might fall maybe under productivity. So you can select productivity there. Then you can also decide to show this app as a featured app in the company portal application. I'm going to leave that as no. And if you have any information, any privacy, any developer owner notes settings that you want to input here, you can do that as well. If you have an image that you want to be accompanied by the app, you can click here and select the image and upload. So I'll click next and I come to the assignment node. So here I can choose to assign the app to devices, which I think that is what I mostly do. Then I'll click next, then I'll review and I'll create. So once the app is uploaded, you need to give it some time. Then later on, you come and check on the app, whether the app was successfully deployed or not. As you can see, I've already used Intune to deploy certain apps here. So if I click on this app, for example, and I come to check the device install status, you'll see there's no results actually here because the app has not been installed on the devices that I assigned the apps to. Now, moving on, let's take a look at compliance policy. Earlier, I mentioned that compliance policies are a set of rules or conditions that can be used to evaluate the configuration of managed devices. So if you create a configuration and you want to check that configuration against some compliance policies you've created, you can create a compliance policy for that. So if to create a compliance policy, what you can do is, I think time is running out. To create a compliance policy, you can come to devices here, then under compliance, you see, click on compliance, then you can create a policy for compliance. Then on the platform, you select the platform, either for Android, for iOS, for Linux, for macOS, for Windows. Since I'm mostly using Windows, so I select Windows 10 and later, and I click create. Then you give it a name. It could be anything. So say policy. Then next, so under compliance settings, so you can check compliance on device health. You can check compliance on device properties. You can check compliance on system security. There are so many things you can check compliance on. So I am going to check compliance on device health. Now you can see under device health, I have 3 settings here. So I can require BitLocker, I can require secure boot, I can require code integrity. Now what this will do is if I create a policy and apply to devices, the policy is going to run against each device that has been assigned to. And if at any point in time, the device does not conform to any of these parameters that I've selected here, Intune is going to flag that device as non-compliant. So if I should click next and actions for non-compliant, the default is always set to mark device as non-compliant. Then you can choose immediately. You can also decide to send an email to the end user, or you can add a device to a retard list. When I click next here, under assignments, I can assign the policy to devices as well. Then click next, then I review and I save. So when you create a compliance policy and at any point in time, a device is non-compliant, if you come to your dashboard here, you will show device, under device non-compliant, you see that there are some devices that exist within your tenant that are non-compliant. So if you want to take a look at why Intune is reporting that device is non-compliant, you can click on the device compliance node here. Then you can see there's a device here. The compliance status says it's non-compliant. So if I should click on this device and I check device compliance, you will see this is failing on this very compliance policy under device health that I've created here. So if I click on device compliance policy under device health, there you see I specified trusted platform module. So currently that device does not have a TPM enabled. So that is why the device is being flagged as non-compliant. So in a nutshell, these are the things you can use Intune for to ensure that your devices are always managed effectively, as well as your applications are also managed and protected properly, so that at any point in time, should devices be compromised, you can rest assured that everything on your device is safeguarded.